Not weather one, which I did when you were gone.
Or when we had to do.
It used to be much easier.
Nope, definitely not that one. Not that one either. What is this one look like? I'll go with that one. It's whimsical.
Whimsical.
All right, gentlemen.
All right, let's do it.
Here we go. All right.
Oh, let's get into it, baby. High school football week number 7. It's the WKYC.com high school football game of the week preview here on Facebook Live and YouTube. Along with Tyler Carey, I'm Dave DeNatale. We asked again, you voted again, and TC again. Something about Tuesday night to Wednesday morning. It gets, when you're in a deadline, like you have your paper is due at 5 o'clock the next day or whatever. You have a test due the next day. Something about that gets the kids and the parents, I think,
the parents more so
to vote. And it looked for a long time this week like we were headed down to Akron, down to do Streetsboro and Coventry. But that's not the case. Our game of the week for week number 7 is...
We will be at Brian Crane's alma mater as the Benedictine Bengals take on the Notre Dame Cathedral Latin Lions. A very good matchup out of the North Coast League, and certainly a game that at least one of these schools has to win, and you think the other one too would want to win, especially after a tough loss.
Yeah, both coming off of losses, and this is one that the people in Notre Dame Cathedral Latin really have been thinking about and preparing for and talking about for a long time, because this used to be, in the old days of high school football in Northeast Ohio, this used to be the charity game when Benny and NDCL would meet. And they're kind of doing a throwback to that this weekend, and there are going to be a lot of alumni back for this game, and it feels like homecoming, but it's a different type of a feeling. And just talking to the NDCL people about it, they're really treating this like a special game, and whenever it's a rivalry game, whenever you get two rival schools like that, it's always special. And then the other thing is, like you said, playoff positioning and playoff points are going to be at a premium in this game, and so we couldn't have asked for a lot of better subplots than what we're going to have here heading into Friday night.
No, I mean, from a football standpoint, these are two of the premier Catholic institutions in Northeast Ohio, not just on the field but off it as well. On the field, Benedictine, one of the top teams in D2, but they're coming off a really tough loss to Archbishop Hoban. Now, I don't think a lot of us expected Benny to win that game because we know how good Hoban is, but here we go, the Knights again just blowing away their competition 42-10, and you know that's got to stink.
Yeah, it's got to be. This has to be a difficult week to refocus, because Benedictine, and really, if you look at what they had done before the Hoban game, I mean, they really had steamrolled most of their opposition. The closest deficit from an opponent was a 15-point win against Austintown Fitch. Good program the week before, but I mean, it's like 52-26, 35-6, 72-8.
And so then here comes the Knights swinging their swords.
Right. And it's just, and I think it's always, you're gauging yourself as much as anything else, because you're gonna, if you're gonna win a state championship in Division II, at some point you're going to have to probably go through Hoban, right?
Absolutely.
So that had to be a disappointment, but you put it away and you start focusing on a rivalry game and a big road game for Benedictine. So I'm real curious to see how the Bengals are going to react and how they're going to bounce back heading into Friday. You shouldn't need a whole lot of motivation for this thing to turn it around and play better.
Absolutely not. And for them, it's going to go through Charles Rosser as their top receiver, one of the top receivers in Northeast Ohio. He's actually an Akron commit. And as you mentioned, really no time to sit and sulk, because you've got this big game coming up. And for NDCL, they have literally no time left to sit and sulk, because they're coming off a heartbreaking loss by 1 point to Padua Franciscan. They're at 500, starting to slip in those D3 region
they
rankings.
Can't lose. They've got, because NDCL's schedule from here on in, they got Benedictine, big chance for computer points. Walsh Jesuit, not much chance for computer points. I mean, Lake Catholic, that's a lower division, and then you've got Hoban to close the season out. You can't have 4 losses and get in, or 5 losses certainly and get in. So you've got to win, and you've got to start thinking about running the table and doing whatever you can do to try to deal with Hoban. But that's the last week of the year. You can't even think about that now.
No.
You've got to win this game. And this is NDCL's schedule, Tyler, is amazing. They've played their first 3 games on the road. Next 4 at home, 2 away, 1 home. Very strange alignment, but
we're not the schedule makers, unfortunately.
No.
So
And
I don't know what goes into that, but it is odd how you bring that up. But we were talking about this before the show. Even at 3-3, and that really was a game that Padua is a decent team, but we all agreed that that's probably a game you can't lose.
I remember that when we did the game last year with Padua and NDCL over at Padua, and I mean, the Bruins had a freshman quarterback at the time, and they fought hard and fought well, but NDCL was the better team. Mm-hmm. So you would think for a home game, big night, and just they really stubbed their toe, and that's a loss that's really, I think, going to come back to haunt them.
But as we said, a win against Benedictine that
flips the script. And
that's all you need to do. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's doable here, especially with the game being in Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely can flip the script. Just real quick, and then we'll get to the poll here. As far as the computer points are concerned for these 2 teams, in Division III Region 9, which is where NDCL is, they come in at 13th. So, again, they've got a lot to tunnel. They got to get by teams like Chardon. They got to get by Geneva, St. Vincent, St. Mary, Dover. It's possible.
Yes.
It's possible. But the problem is the top half of that region, Streetsboro, Kenston, Aurora, New Philly, Steubenville. I mean, it's very tough, that top 6. But it's certainly possible for NDCL beat Benedictine this weekend and maybe get yourself back near the top 10 with a fighting chance down the stretch.
All you've got to do is get in. We saw it with a team like St. Edward last year in D1 where they were the 7th seed. It didn't matter. All they did was get in.
All you did is
go
get
on
in.
And run, and you never know what could happen. And then you mentioned Benedictine. They are currently 6th. In the D2 Region 6 rankings.
Boy, what a great region. I mean, you've got Avon, Eau Falls, Maple Heights, Avon Lake, which I think right now they're playing as well as anybody in that region. Brecksville having a kind of a renaissance season. They're 5th.
0-10 last year.
Yeah, what a great
10,
turnaround.
And here they are sitting 5th in that region. And then you have Benny right there, and you got to think if they just keep picking up wins in that great North Coast League, that they're only going to move up in those rankings.
And then Wadsworth and Barberton round out the top 8, and Barberton's got a tough one against Aurora at home on Friday.
And then right after that, they got
Massillon
next week. Have fun, Magics.
Welcome to life.
Magic.
Welcome to life, and that's not even a Suburban League game. That's just a non-conference game. But so we'll be watching those regions very closely Friday night and seeing how some of those affected schools play, to see, if we could get some movement in the rankings heading into Week 7. We're already now heading into Week 7, 3 more games after this Friday. So
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yep.
How quick it's gone.
And it's going fast, and these games start to pick up more importance, and you'll start to see, I think, more urgency. Sometimes coaches will go for it on 4th down when maybe you wouldn't expect them to, and the play calling will change sometimes because you're trying to give your team a fighting chance to still get to the postseason. So some desperate times sometimes do call for desperate measures. So I think that adds another element, I think, to a rivalry game between Benny and NDCL. It's a rivalry game. It's computer points on the line. It's pride. It's a charity game, throwback night. There's a lot of things to kind of bounce in this game. So that's where Munch and I will be Friday night. I'm very excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. And I'll tell you some teams that aren't desperate, though, at least for now, are weekly
top five,
which, once again, for the 3rd week in a row, unchanged.
No change.
Completely unchanged.
Everybody's holding the fort right now.
Absolutely, and we'll get right to it. Menor remains number 1 after a very nice 41-7 win at Solon. Another tough loss for the Comets. They're sitting at 4-2, but Menor 6-0. Brian Trobel and Riley Coughlin each had over 100 yards rushing and touchdowns in that game. Menor now 1st in the AP poll, and we'll give you an update again on the national rankings. Dino, you ready?
Yes.
USA Today, they remain 19th. National Prep poll, they move up to 18th. Max Prep's Excellent 25, they are still 15th. High School Football America, still 14th. Max Prep's Freeman rankings, after dropping 2 weeks in a row, they are now back up to 10th in those computer polls.
And they're going to start to play some teams, and certainly Solon is a very good team. I don't want to. And by the way, Solon's still, they're just out of the playoff picture. They're now 9th, and St. Ignatius is kind of leapfrogged ahead of everybody.
By the way, I was going to get to this later, but St. Ignatius, hats off to them. They got a very nice win against Rockledge, Florida last week. I believe it was 42-0 or 42-7, and that gets them
just
right
with
back.
Just what the doctor ordered.
We mentioned that they were in trouble, and they got it. I give them credit for it.
Just what the doctor ordered. But just back to the point with Menor, they've got Brunswick coming up. They've got Euclid coming up. So I think the more quality wins are out there for them to keep moving up nationally as we go.
No doubt. And one quick note on Menor. This is kind of unrelated to their goings-on the field, but Luke Floria, who's their top receiver, currently rated as maybe the top receiver in Northeast Ohio. He was originally committed to Boston College.
Yes.
He canceled his commitment last week. He is now going to my alma mater, Kent State University.
Well,
nice get for Sean Lewis.
I was going to say, that tells me a lot about how good that program is doing right now in terms of the kind of the ability to go and keep the young kids home. Keep the local kids home.
Checkers, man. Here we are playing chess. We can get back in the win column. I so badly want my program to have winning football, but
they're on their way.
I'm exiting the point right now.
Okay.
But good for Menor, number one. Number two, once again, is Massillon. Now, you mentioned Austintown Fitch, a very good program, and they are 55-7. Tigers beat Austintown Fitch. They're currently first in the D2 AP poll. Terrence Keys had 185 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns in the first half of that game. They get Gateway, a 6-1 team out of Pennsylvania.
That's interesting. Week. That'll be interesting to see how they do.
If Massillon's going to lose before the playoffs, this is going to be it. I'm not saying they will, but this is probably their biggest stepping stone on the way to the postseason.
Yeah. After that, the Tigers have Barberton at Barberton, home to Louisville, and then at McKinley to wrap up the regular season.
I should say there's 2 stepping stones.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I think they
would. They've kind of owned that rivalry the last couple of years, but you can never count out McKinley in that game for sure.
Absolutely not. Okay, number 3 again is Archbishop Hoban. Now, we had mentioned that Hoban, really, as good as they are, and we know that they're good, really hadn't beaten anybody. Well, that changed this past Saturday with that 32-point victory over Benedictine. Shane Ham, 5 total touchdowns. Diamante Trayanum with 3 himself. After holding St. V to only 17 total yards in the previous game, Benny got 150 this past week. So a little bit better, but that's still very good for any team to hold the Bengals to that few yards.
Yeah, they've had 2 shutouts this year. They've held opponents under 13 points 5 times. I mean, really, really strong.
I don't see them losing again.
No, I don't either. I don't either. I think they're going to be able to carry the momentum into the postseason. And I just feel like there's going to be a collision course at some point between Massillon and Hoban in the playoffs.
Final,
it just feels that way.
They're at Lake Catholic next week, by the way. St. Edward comes in at number 4. They are tied for second in the D1 AP poll. They just beat Buckdale 45-21.
Yeah.
And Buckdale's a pretty good team, so good for the Eagles there. They are now starting to inch up in the national rankings. They are ranked 25th, according to High School Football America. And remember, they're only lost by 1 point to that top 10 national Menor team. Joseph Fermani, who's now starting to get some national recruiting attention, he had a couple of more touchdowns, and they get the big test this week.
Yeah, I mean it's the battle. I mean, again, we talked about it last week. We're so used to a Week 10 St. Ignatius St. Edward battle, but they're going to play it in Week 7. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? And
we think it may have been because of that playoff rematch they had last year. Not a big fan of it not being the last game of the year, but it's not going to take away from the intensity of this game. And
it's still bragging rights. It still means so much to the players. It means so much to the alumni. It'll still have that same kind of fire to it.
And Ignatius, coming off that big win against Rockledge, is thinking about revenge because remember, it was St. Edward who in that rematch knocked them out of the playoffs when most people had St. Ignatius as the favorite to win the state championship.
Right. So it's a revenge game. So that'll be an emotional night for sure.
Definitely. And number 5 again, also tied for second in the D1 poll with St. Edward, unbeaten 6-0 Euclid after a tough 21-14 win over your Strongsville Mustangs. My condolences.
Yeah, they gave him a good fight.
Strongsville is a pretty good team. I shouldn't knock them there, but Dion Valentine, their starting quarterback, who's been very good this year, actually missed the game with an injury. Did not matter. Jabir Mujihad had 2 long touchdowns in this game.
I love watching Mujihad run the football. He had
a great game against Medina when you guys were out there.
Yeah, he's terrific.
A little bit again, though, where they kind of get out to a lead. I think they were up 21-0 or 21-6, and again, they allow the other team to get back in the game.
That's the one thing Jeff Rotsky just absolutely still can't put his finger on, why they can't close a team out more simply than they are. Why they're letting teams back in games. And they've got Solon this weekend, and you know, Solon's going to be coming in feisty and upset and basically playing for their season. I mean, everything now for Solon's playing for their season. So that's going to really kind of ratchet up, I think, the fire of that game a little bit more.
Well, the good news here is for Euclid, this time it really wasn't the defense.
No.
Because only 21 points, but the offense struggled a little bit without Valentine.
Valentine's I mean, he's the playmaker of that offense. He really gets that going. Really loved watching him play when we were down there in Medina a few weeks ago. And to not have him in there engineering the offense, I think it's still impressive that they got 21 points. But obviously, Mujihad was going to have to be the workhorse of that game. But I saw no reason to not still have Euclid in there because they haven't done anything to deserve. I mean, it's the same thing as why I've been voting for Avon. Avon's done nothing to not deserve a vote, but I mean that's how good Northeast Ohio football is this year. A lot of teams with one loss are really good.
Well, when you have the D1 region rankings up here now, men are number 1. Obviously, Euclid has now passed St. Edward for that number 2 ranking because again, it's all about the computer polls. Best record doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be higher in those rankings, and Euclid, again, only giving up 14 points. I should note in that game, 9 times Strongsville got into Euclid territory and got no points.
Can't do that.
No.
Can't leave them on the field.
It does say a lot about the Panther D, though, that they're able to bend but don't break in those situations. And I'm hoping for them that may give them a little bit more confidence because, again, in those other games where they've kind of given up that big lead against McKinley and Medina, it's been the defense that's kind of failed them a little bit. But now that they actually were able to make a stand, maybe now we can say, okay, we know what we can do. Maybe it's not going to happen this time, especially if we get more points on the board with Valentine coming back.
Yeah, rest of that D1, Region 1, rest of that top 8. Yeah, you got Menor, Euclid, St. Edward, McKinley, Jackson, Stowe, hanging tough at 6.
Good Brunswick year for them.
Yeah, Brunswick, St. Ignatius. And then, the teams on the outside looking in, just keep in mind, Solon, Medina, Cleveland Heights, Strongsville. Those are the kind of the 4 teams I think still have.
After that,
and after the shot. Yeah.
And then you mentioned with Brunswick, they got a big game this week with Menor coming in there.
They've got,
we'll see what happens. I mean, that's certainly an opportunity for Brunswick to make a statement.
They're having a great year. They're having a great year. I don't know if they've built themselves up to try to be a contender and be a team that could handle Menor. I mean, you're going to get your opportunity here this week.
I mentioned coming in there, by the way, they're actually going to Menor.
That's
so
right.
That's only going to make it harder. But
That's right.
Once again, another great GCC matchup.
Yeah. Anybody on the outside looking, any honorable mentions?
A couple. Again, we mentioned how many teams are ranked number 1 from Northeast Ohio in their respective divisions. Kenston remains number 1. They had a bit of a tough game against Willoughby South.
South gave them everything they could handle until, I think, the 4th quarter, and then they came back and really kind of put some distance between them and the Rebels. But it was 37-21. That, I think, was what Jeff Grubich's team needed. You can't. They beat West G 27-10, but that was storm night. That was a test. Now, Kenston's got Chardon.
The only team that
beat them last year.
And you guys were at that game.
Yes, we were.
That was a fantastic matchup.
So, and then keep an eye also on the Mayfield Wildcats. They've not lost a game yet.
I believe because I was looking at the polls, they've moved up into the top 5 of those polls, or at least in the top 10. Other teams keep an eye on. Kirtland keeps rolling. They're number 1 in D5. Orville number 2 in D5. Norwalk St. Paul, I think, is top 5 in Division 7. And you mentioned Avon, too. They get a tough test with North Olmsted this week.
They should. Yeah, it's. I think for Avon, just don't stub your toe. I mean, North Olmsted's always a challenge. Don't stub your toe. And don't get caught looking ahead to Olmsted Falls in 2 weeks.
That's the thing. You've got a little bit of a gauntlet coming up for the Eagles here. They've had, other than Avon Lake, their schedule's been relatively easy. Well, now they got North Olmsted, North Ridgeville. That's going to we think an easy win. Then you go to Olmsted Falls, then Amherst to finish out the year. Yeah. Really, 3 out of 4 of those are games that I'm not saying they will lose, but if you're not careful, you can get tripped up.
Yeah, and just that aforementioned Mayfield team that's 6-0. They've got the Rebels from Willoughby South. I mean, what a tough stretch for South. I mean, they've had to deal with Eastlake North, a rivalry game. Then they had to deal with Kenston, and then you get Mayfield. That's not easy.
Give them credit. They've been hanging in there. Even when they don't win, and that's great for a program that's really been on the downside for the last few years.
Yeah, but watch this stretch for Mayfield. They've got South at home at Riverside. We did that one last year. Then home to North, and then they'll close out the regular season at Kenston. That might be a game. Man. That might be a game. We might have that one on the schedule as one of our nominees.
There's a few nominees. See. This is what we do. We already look ahead.
We already look ahead. That's for us to do. In fact,
we're going to be discussing that later today. What we'll do for next week.
Yeah, we're already starting to think about Week 8, just to tell you. But that's kind of a snapshot of kind of where teams are at here as we continue to move our way through. Let's see. Yeah, Wonderdale Roberts says Norwalk Truckers, Norwalk St. Paul Flyers. We got Norwalk St. Paul reference.
Truckers are a pretty good team.
Truckers are a good team. Yeah. Barbara DeLugos is watching. Good to have you on, Barbara. And any relation to Dave? To the coach? I don't know. Might be. But we appreciate you watching and checking in. It's this is fun now, TC. I mean, now we get to we start to kind of wrap it up. Rivalry game this week with Benedictine and NDCL, and we're starting to look at conference races being very tight and potential big matchups in Week 9 and Week 10. This is when it gets fun for guys like us who really enjoy watching Northeast Ohio high school football.
Oh, absolutely, because, and I mentioned this before, you just see the passion in these kids' faces. In my mind, it's the purest form of football there is, and that's what makes it so incredible to watch, because you see the determination that they want of them to win these games and get to the playoffs. Even for some of them, just getting to the playoffs is the greatest thing in the world, and for some it's you want to go even further. But I'm with you. It's so much fun, and I've been covering it for a few years now, and I'm really excited to see what these last few weeks have in store for us.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll really get things rolling, though. On Friday, Mark Munch Bishop and I will be over in Chardon as the Lions from NDCL, Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, will host the Benedictine Bengals. We'll be on the air with our pregame and all of our coverage on our WKYC.com High School Game of the Week. Get started about 6:50 or so, right around the time of the national anthem wraps up. We start to take over from there, and then
hopefully it's easier for you guys to get up in the press box this time.
Yes, hopefully we won't be climbing ladders. Although I'm told I think we may have a tent above us just to be on the safe side. Although I think I got to double check with Mr. Wentz, but I think we're supposed to be okay for Friday. But looking forward to being out there. I've never been to NDCL before, so looking forward to being out there, and we'll get your scores throughout the game. We'll talk to the coach and players of the winning team after the game. And if it's anything like Mark Munch Bishop last week getting mobbed by the Lutheran West players, you're in for a treat. I mean, you're in for an absolute treat. I mean, it's whenever you can get Munch getting mobbed, it's a good thing. I mean, I feel like I've done my job. I kind of walked away and left. So again, our high school football game of the week, week number 7, WKYC.com. It will be Benedictine at NDCL. We will see you on Friday. For Tyler Carey, I'm Dave DeNatale. Thanks for watching our high school football game of the week preview right here on 3 News, Facebook Live, and also on YouTube.